Yes, sir.
I think it'd be appropriate if we have prayer for this guy that was arrested molesting kids in Greenfield. I don't know his name, but I know where he lives.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe
Pray for him.
well,
Do you believe we should?
I think I'd rather do that in my private prayers.
So it's not open to the public.
Yeah, especially if I don't know much information about it.
Okay.
That's kind of a private thing to announce.
Yeah.
So I will remember him in my private prayers.
What would Jesus do?
Well, he'd try to help him. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, good morning, everyone. So good to see everyone this morning. Give you a couple of updates on some of the folks that we've been praying for. Miss Ellen Tart is back at home after being at the hospital in Vanderbilt this past week. Bob Buckley is also back at home and showing some improvement this morning, and so we're thankful for that especially. Miss Dean McCollum, I believe she's at home too, right? Okay, so Miss Dean's at home as well, recovering after being in the hospital this past week. And Jerry, Clint was saying that Jerry might be coming home soon. There's still some more tests that need to be done and all that kind of thing. Also, Miss Glenda asked if we would remember her sister, Aretha Glisson, in our prayers. She just had a fall and broke her femur and is in surgery probably even as we speak this morning. And so we want to remember her. Also, we want to continue to remember the family of Tammy Doyle in our prayers this morning. They are planning a celebration of life service for next Saturday. And I've just completely gone blank on the time. At 12, okay. And is that going to be at the funeral home? Okay, at Williams Funeral Home. So that'll be next Saturday at 12, celebration of life service for Tammy Doyle. Let's continue to remember all of that family in our prayers. Okay, anybody else have a prayer request for us today? Oh, I will mention this. Wednesday night we mentioned Tom Jackson's, I forget the relationship, I think a cousin, Linda Janka. She passed away later this week, so we want to continue to remember them too. All right, anybody else that we need to pray for today? Glenn, would you mind leading us in a word of prayer? Amen. Thank you so much, Glenn. No sooner did the words get out of my mouth that I called on you for prayer. I remember you've been sick here lately too, and it's so good to see you able to be with us today. I hope you're feeling better and hope that continues to get better as well. All right, so if you got your Bibles handy, let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 17, which is where we're studying today. Well, that says 2 Samuel, but it's 1 Samuel. That's wrong up there. We'll be in 1 Samuel chapter 17 today. Maybe that's the only mistake I'll make today, Sam. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right. David and Goliath. All right, so the last couple weeks, as we've been working through 1 Samuel, we've seen Saul. There's a lot of promise when he is anointed king, but that quickly begins to slide and to decrease over time. And so last week, as we looked at chapter 16, God sends Samuel to anoint Saul's eventual replacement, which is a little runt of a boy from Jesse's family named David, who is not at all at this point very impressive if you're only looking at the outside things. But God tells Samuel, don't judge him based on outward appearance, because that's how man looks at things, but God looks at the heart. And underneath the surface, David was somebody who was a person after God's own heart, and that's what mattered most to God. And so we see, kind of a correlation there that as God's favor upon David rises, his favor upon Saul falls and declines. Because Saul has been disobedient to God, things are drifting further and further away from God. And it's immediately after this that we have this very dramatic, powerful story about David facing Goliath. Which, this is a powerful story for a lot of reasons. It's one of those stories that teaches us about faith and what it really looks like when it's at its best. It's a little bit sad. The term David and Goliath is used a lot. You hear it a lot in sports. Especially in a tournament, you have the number one seed against the Cinderella team. And a lot of times they'll say, this is one of those David and Goliath stories. And that's okay, but the difficulty I have with that is that term in our lingo has just become sort of an underdog story. The David and Goliath is just simply an underdog overcoming a superior enemy that opposes him. And the story of David and Goliath is so much more than just an underdog story. If that's all that it was, Goliath would have handled David with no problem whatsoever. The David and Goliath story is a story about what even inferior strength and ability can do when that ability has been trusted to God completely. That's really what this story is about. And not only does it teach us about that kind of faith and trust, but it also really shines a light on the difference between Saul and David. The king that the people wanted and the king that God wants. Okay? And so those are the two things that we really want to highlight as we work our way through this. All right, I'm going to kind of summarize some of the first part of this until we get later on into some of the things that I really want to focus in on. But Israel is again engaged in a struggle with the Philistines. And at this time, they're at a place called Sukkah. And there is a valley. You see the picture over there on the left, a valley with two hills on either side of it. And so you have the Philistines camped on one hill toward the south, and you have the Israelites encamped on the hill to the north. And they're just sort of sitting there staring each other down for a little bit. And this giant champion among the Philistines marches out from the hill out into the valley and challenges anyone from the Israel's camp to come out and face him. And this is not an uncommon thing to happen back then. It was kind of a winner-take-all kind of situation where the one camp sends out their best champion, the other camp sends out their best champion, and whoever wins takes it all, and the other camp will surrender to the one who wins. This is not unusual for this to happen in warfare back during this time. And this is what Goliath challenges the Israelites to do. If you think you've got anybody over there that can match me, just send them on out here and we'll fight and we'll see who's standing at the end of the day, and whoever is standing will take all. And no one from Israel wants to volunteer for this. Because as the Bible describes Goliath, he's over 9 feet tall. I don't know how much he weighed, but it had to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 400 or 500 pounds. But he was all muscle, okay? And he wears this coat of armor that weighs 125 pounds. And he has his shield and his sword, and he has this spear. The head of the spear weighs about 15 pounds, but no matter how heavy it is, he can take it and he can fling it through the air and hit the bullseye with no problem. And I mean, when it comes to physical specimens, he is the cream of the crop. I mean, he is one of the best that God's creation has ever produced, if you're only looking at the situation from that standpoint. But what did chapter 16 teach us about what God looks at? Does he look at the outward appearance? No. Does he look at the muscles? No. What does he look for? The heart. The heart. And unfortunately, Israel at first has no one with either one. No one with the physical brawn to face Goliath, nor with the heart to go out there and face him. And so what happens is David, even though he's already been anointed by King Samuel to be the next king, he's still carrying on as he always has. Jesse's still sending him out to take care of the sheep. He doesn't go out to battle with the rest of the brothers who go out. I mean, he's still the runt of the family. And so Jesse sends David to carry food out to his brothers who are on the battlefield. So he gets someone to watch the sheep, and he carries the food that Jesse has put aside to take to his brothers. And so when he comes, maybe on the way there, he's expecting to see some kind of battle taking place when he gets there, and instead everyone's just standing around. And David wants to know what is the situation? Why isn't anyone fighting? And that's when we come down to about verse 25. That's where I really want to pick it up. So David has arrived at the camp to bring this food to his brothers, and there's this whole conversation about what's taking place. And so verse 25. So the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. He's talking about Goliath there. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king, will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. Now, first of all, who should have been at this moment riding out to face Goliath in the battlefield? The king. That was Saul's job to start with. This is the very kind of situation for which he has been appointed king. And he should have already been armed and ready to ride out there to face Goliath. But he's sitting still. And he's not even looking to go himself, but he's looking for ways that he can motivate someone within Israel to go. And what is the primary means, if you look back at verse 25 again, what's the primary means he is using to try to motivate someone from Israel to go out and face Goliath? Money. Money. Whoever goes out to face Goliath, Saul has promised that he will have great riches, more money than he can spend in a lifetime. He's going to get to marry Saul's daughter, which is pretty much a promise of an inheritance that's going to continue to make him rich. And furthermore, a promise that he's going to be exempt from taxes in Israel. So not only is he going to have a lot of money, he's going to keep a lot of money because the tax man is not going to come looking for any of his money. So the promise is just go out there and face Goliath and defeat him, and Saul is going to bless you with more money than you can spend in a lifetime. Why didn't anyone sign up for that? You took the words right out of my mouth, Chuck. It's going to be pretty hard to spend that money after you've been killed by Goliath, hasn't it? And so no one's signing up for this because they think, I'm just going to go out there and die anyway. So what good is this money going to be to me after that? And so no one is willing to sign up for that. All right, come down to verse 26. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him. I love that. Here's this little guy, young guy, talking to these older, battle-hardened soldiers, and he's about to put them in their place. And ordinarily you would say, well, who do you think you are talking to us like that? But he's right. He's completely right in everything he's about to say. Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? Sound like David's worried about money? He doesn't mention money at all, does he? That's not what motivates David. What motivates David? Who does this Philistine think he is? He's challenged our God. God that brought us out of Egypt, the God that parted the waters of the Red Sea, the God that created the world, the God who is our Jehovah. He has come out and defied our God. Who does he think he is? David doesn't need money to fight Goliath. He wants to fight for the honor of the name of his God and take down anyone who would speak in a blasphemous way about his God. Because he is a man after what? God's own heart. His heart is so tied up and entangled with God's heart, if you insult God, you've insulted him. And he takes it very personally. And he's not about to stand by and watch this giant, Goliath, defy his God. Verse 27. And the people answered him in this manner, saying, so it shall be done for the man who kills him. And so Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David. And he said, why do you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? And then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. A little bit of sibling rivalry here. Yeah, that's nothing new. It's been around since Cain and Abel, hasn't it? And Eliab might be a little bit bitter already because Samuel passed over him and then anointed David. You know, he was the best suited one, you know, the biggest, the strongest, the oldest. He would have felt like he was the one that should have been anointed king. But he got passed on. And so he has these things to say to David. Who did you leave with the sheep? That's an insult. You have no place out here on the battlefield. You need to be back out there at the pasture with your sheep. That's about all you can handle. Don't stay in your lane, little brother. Don't get in over your head here. Which is all Satan's way of trying to get David to doubt himself. And maybe he'll just sort of back into the background and go back home and not do what he really came here to do. It says a lot about David. Even his oldest brother, he turns a deaf ear. The only one he's really listening to is God. The only one he really cares about is what God wishes in this situation. And I love verse 30. It says he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And the way it's worded is like it's like he's going down the line. It's like, come on, man. This is our God. Don't you want to go out there and defend our God? And this guy won't do anything, so he goes down to the next one. He's just going down the line. Surely there's somebody here who cares about God's honor. And he just keeps going down the line, and unfortunately, all of them answer in the same way the first ones did. What good is the money if Goliath kills you and all that kind of thing? So David finally realizes if no one else here is going to go, I am. I'm not going to stand idly by while my God is dishonored out here on this field. All right, so you come down to verse 31. Now, when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul and sent for him. Now, I can picture them laughing as they're doing this. Elbowing him, hey, here's our champion. He finally showed up. Here he is, this little scrawny thing. Look at these arms. He thinks he's going to go out there and defeat Goliath. He won't even be tall enough to reach his belly button. And the word gets passed down, and my guess would be comically to Saul, hey, your champion's finally here. And it's like a big joke as they're bringing David in before him. But quickly it becomes obvious to Saul that David is not joking. Verse 32, then David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. He always calls him the Philistine. That's important. It emphasizes what's really at stake here. It's not just about winning this battle, but it's about the difference between God's people and the Gentile people, the heathen people, those who worship the true and living God and those who don't. That's what's at stake here for David. Verse 33, Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. This ain't his first rodeo, David. He's been in many battles like this, and he has defeated many champions who are much, much greater than you. You've never even seen a battle. Who do you think you are to go out here and face Goliath? Notice what David says, verse 34. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. I love it. I tell you what, this David is no joke. He has this little flock of sheep. And many times, I get the impression this has happened multiple times. Out there with those sheep, it's his job to take care of them and protect them. And along comes a lion or a bear trying to steal some of his sheep. Now, I noticed something this time when I read it I had never noticed before. I think when I had pictured this before, I pictured David kind of watching out over the sheep, and a bear wanders out from the woods and is getting a little bit too close to his flock, so he arms that sling with one of those stones and winds it around and sails it across there to kind of deter that bear, make him go back into the woods. Or same thing with the lion. But if you look at it again, that's not exactly accurate, is it? What happened? That's right. He gets up and close and personal with the lion and the bear. The predator actually gets into the flock and steals one of the sheep and goes away with it. And David, rather than saying, well, I hate to lose that sheep, goes out chasing after the predator, hunts it down, and then takes that sheep from the mouth of that lion or bear or whatever it was that had come after his flock, wolf or whatever else. And it's going to be implied more so later on that David has developed this kind of courage, not because he thinks he is so awesome, but even when taking care of these sheep, David has put all of his weight on relying on God. And he has developed this conviction. God protected me when I had to face a lion. God protected me when I had to face a bear. And this uncircumcised Philistine will be no different. The bigger they come, the harder they fall. It's important we understand that David does not put the weight on himself and his confidence that he can face this challenge. All of his confidence lies in what God has done for him in the past. And the Bible doesn't specifically say this, but I can't help but wonder, God watching David out there taking care of that flock, even when he was a little boy, if God wasn't saying, that's the man I want leading my people. If he will fight that way to protect a little flock of sheep, what will he do for me? And what will he do for my people? So David defends himself to Saul and saying, I might not have fought many battles, but this is not the first time I've faced a challenge, and God has always been with me before. Verse 37. Moreover, David said, the Lord, notice that, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. I wonder what was behind Saul's statement there. Maybe David convinced him. And he really thought, there's something special about this guy. Or I can't help but wonder if he might have also thought, who else do I have? No one else is volunteering to go. And so he says, go and the Lord be with you. And I kind of feel like there's an element of, that's the only shot in the world that they have, is if the Lord is going to go and be with him. Verse 38. So Saul clothed David with his armor, and he put a bronze helmet on his head. He also clothed him with a coat of mail. And David fastened his sword to his armor and tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. I find that a little bit comical, don't you? And one thing about this, why does the Bible even tell us this? I think it really highlights another indication of where Saul's heart is. Solomon will say later in the Proverbs, some trust in chariots and some trust in horses, but we trust who? The Lord our God. And this is part of Saul's downfall, that he kind of puts more confidence in the armor, the military strategy, all that kind of thing, than he does in God himself. So he thinks David needs all this armor, and David's putting it on, and helmet's falling over, and it's covering up his eyes, and it's so heavy he can't hardly even walk around or do anything. And David's like, I can't wear this stuff. And furthermore, the point here is not to go out and fight Goliath in his battle. That's not what we're fighting. We're fighting God's battle. And David would rather go out there with what he knows, trusting God, than to try to fill armor that doesn't fit him. All right? So verse 40. Then he took his staff in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook. Now, I don't think that David thought he might miss the first 4 times. I read a book several years ago called A Shepherd Looks at Psalm 23 by Philip Keller. If you've not read that book, you need to read that book at some point in your life. I promise you will not regret it. Short little book, won't take you can read it in a week, tops. But it's a great little book because Philip Keller lived for many years as a shepherd. And he talks about Psalm 23 from the viewpoint of a shepherd. I won't go into all of it, but one of the things that he talks about that I love so much is the difference between the rod and the staff. The staff, the shepherd's staff, is the long, slender stick with the hook on the end of it. Our candy canes are made to resemble them. And this is what he uses when the sheep start to wander from the flock. He can reach over with his hook and get a hold of them, steer them back where they need to be. Uses it as a walking stick. When he needs to inspect them, he might reach over and use it to grab one so he can get it close and check them for ticks and those kind of things. And then he has his rod, which is a short little club thing. And this is what he uses to protect his flock. And not only will he use it to beat off a predator that might try to get after his flock, but he can fling it. And he can hit a dime. He can fling that thing with complete accuracy. Now, evidently, David used a sling instead of a rod. I guess he was better with a sling than he was with a rod. But that was his weapon of choice, but it was the same concept. This is what he used to protect his flock. Okay, real quick, I'm going to tell you this one story. I just can't not tell it. So Philip Keller tells a story in his book where he had gone out with, I don't think it was him, it was someone else that he knew, was going out in Africa to get pictures of elephants. It was a photographer, and he had hired a shepherd to be his guide as he was going through the jungle. So they were up on a ridge, and they saw a herd, is that what elephants are? Herd? Of elephants down in a valley, and there was a large stone there at the top of the ridge. So the plan was they were going to roll that stone down the hill, and it would get the elephants moving, and he wanted to get some action shots of them. So he and the shepherd, they bend down to lift up that rock, and as soon as they do, a cobra shoots out from underneath it. And without even batting an eye, that shepherd took his rod and flung it at that cobra and killed it dead as a snake. And the fellow said what impressed him was 2 things. Number one, no matter what they were doing, he never put that rod down. He still had it in his hand. The shepherd always has his sling, his rod, whatever it is he used. But the second thing was how deadly accurate he was with it. That's what impressed this fellow. What's my point? I'm getting to it, I promise. I haven't forgotten about it. David didn't take 5 stones because he was afraid he'd miss with the first 4. David never missed. Shepherd doesn't miss. We find out in 1 Chronicles, Goliath had 4 brothers. Goliath had 4 brothers. And if they came down on that battlefield after he took down Goliath, they were going to get a taste of it too. He was going to take down all of them. It says something about the confidence of David. Losing this battle is nowhere on his radar. Because if he serves God, he cannot be defeated. Cannot be. There's no mystery why when God sent Samuel to Jesse's household and Eliab came out, he said, no, not that one. Our other brothers came out, no, not them. And then the little runt, they had to go find him out in the field, and they bring him in. David said, God says, yep, that's the one right there. No mystery why. Anybody who has that kind of confidence in what God can do needs to be leading God's people. All right, so you know the rest of the story. David goes out there on the battlefield. Goliath laughs at him. Who do you think you are? Am I a dog that you come out here with sticks to challenge me? And David explains, nope. Let's see. Look at verse 45. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and spear, with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air, the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And he is real. He has real power. Not like Dagon, the Philistine god. He has real power. And so it was when the Philistine came and drew near to meet David, David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took a stone, and he slung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. And so David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. And there was no sword in the hand of David. He had to take Goliath's own sword to finish the job later on, because he didn't even have a sword in his hand. And so it was a great victory that day, and it really highlights the contrast between where David is spiritually and where Saul is. And as we get into the next couple of chapters, that's just going to increase more and more. And we'll see that more and more. All right, we'll stop there for today, and that's where we'll pick up next week.